France is panicking, and they don't want you to know why. Inside Nigeria's military, Africa's most powerful armed force, soldiers are refusing orders, not from weakness, from something far more dangerous: loyalty to the wrong side. The same soldiers ECOWAS was counting on to crush the Sahel rebellion are quietly saying no. And the entire Western strategy for West Africa is now one decision away from total collapse. This isn't a protest. This isn't politics. This is a betrayal, happening in silence, inside the machine built to prevent exactly this. Someone opened a door that cannot be closed again. Something is breaking inside West Africa's most powerful military. Not from the outside, from within. At a moment when the economic community of West African states was supposed to be presenting a unified front, backed by Western powers, armed with sanctions and threatening intervention, cracks have appeared in the one country that was meant to make it all work. Nigeria, the regional giant, the nation whose military budget dwarfs every other ECOWAS member combined. The country without which no military action in the Sahel is logistically or politically conceivable. And inside that military, soldiers are reportedly refusing. Not openly, not yet. But the hesitation is real, it is spreading. And it is sending shockwaves through every chancellery that has a stake in how West Africa's political order is either preserved or rewritten. In northern Nigeria, around key military hubs, soldiers are reportedly questioning orders that would send them to fight neighbors, people who share their ethnicity, their faith, their markets, their blood. This is not insubordination born of cowardice. It is something more dangerous to the establishment. It is insubordination born of conscience and identity. And that is a problem that no amount of Western pressure or diplomatic pressure can simply dissolve. To understand what is happening, you need to understand the geography of loyalty in this part of the world, and why the lines drawn on colonial-era maps have always been in tension with the lines drawn in the hearts of the people who live inside them. The Sahel is not a region that submits easily to outside definitions. Stretching across the southern edge of the Sahara, this vast corridor of scrubland and dry savanna connects Senegal in the west to Sudan in the east, passing through Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, and Chad. For centuries before European colonization, these territories were connected by trade routes, Islamic scholarship networks, pastoral migration corridors, and political confederacies that moved freely across what are now international borders. The House of Fulani cultural sphere, which sits at the heart of northern Nigeria, does not stop at Nigeria's northern frontier. It bleeds directly into Niger, into Mali's eastern regions, into Burkina Faso's north. The soldiers in those Nigerian barracks are not looking at a foreign enemy. They are looking at cousins. This is the foundational tension that France, ECOWAS leadership, and their Western backers appear to have catastrophically underestimated. When the military juntas of Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger began consolidating power in 2021, 2022, and 2023 respectively, the immediate response from ECOWAS was sanctions, suspension, and pressure. The bloc froze assets, closed borders, cut off financial flows, and issued ultimatums. France, which had maintained military forces across the Sahel for over a decade under its counterterrorism operations, backed the pressure campaign. The United States signaled support. The architecture of the response was designed to look overwhelming, a coordinated international front that would force the juntas to back down or face consequences. It did not work. Instead, something unexpected happened. The juntas did not buckle. They rallied. Public opinion in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, exhausted by years of failed counterterrorism under Western-backed governments, resentful of French military presence, and increasingly attracted to a Pan-Africanist narrative that framed the juntas as liberators rather than usurpers, moved decisively behind the new leadership. Protests against France erupted. French flags were burned. Russian flags were waved. Wagner Group contractors arrived. And the three countries announced the Alliance of Sahel States, a mutual defense pact explicitly designed to resist what they called neo-colonial interference. Is this a genuine sovereignty movement or an opportunistic power grab dressed in liberation rhetoric? That question matters, and we will return to it. But what matters equally is the effect it produced on the populations of neighboring countries, including Nigeria. Because the narrative of the Sahel juntas did not stay inside their borders. It traveled through social media, through mosques, through informal networks of traders and relatives. And it resonated in ways that governments across the region were not prepared for. In Nigeria, a country of over 220 million people, and one of the most complex political ecosystems on the continent, the Sahel narrative landed hardest in the north. Here, communities that already felt politically marginalized within Nigeria's own federal structure, communities that had watched with anger as French military operations allegedly caused civilian casualties in Mali and Burkina Faso, found themselves ideologically aligned with the juntas even as their own government was considering military action against them. That alignment is not abstract. It is visceral, and it is now showing up inside the Nigerian armed forces. This is where the stakes become undeniably clear. Nigeria's military is not a monolith. Like the country itself, it is a layered institution shaped by ethnic, regional, and religious fault lines that have never been fully resolved since the Civil War of the 1960s. Senior officer corps, procurement decisions, and deployment orders flow largely from Abuja, from a political class that has historically been more integrated into southern Nigerian power structures, more connected to Western partners, and more invested in the ECOWAS framework as a source of Nigerian prestige and influence. But the soldiers who would actually be deployed to a northern front, who would cross into Niger or Burkina Faso, are disproportionately from northern Nigeria. They are Hausa, Fulani, Kanuri. They are Muslim. They are, in many cases, from communities that straddle the same cultural world as the people they would be ordered to fight. When reports emerged of reluctance and quiet resistance to intervention orders in military hubs across Nigeria's north, it was not a surprise to anyone who understood this dynamic. It was, if anything, overdue. But here is where the story becomes geopolitically explosive. Because this is not simply a matter of soldiers having second thoughts. It is a symptom of a much deeper fracture, one that is now forcing a reckoning with the entire premise of the ECOWAS intervention strategy. France's role in designing and pushing that strategy cannot be overstated. Paris has had a direct military and political presence in Francophone West Africa for decades. Its relationship with the region's governments, many of which maintained French military bases, signed defense agreements with Paris, and educated their elites in French institutions, gave it enormous leverage over the machinery of governance. When the juntas moved against governments that were effectively French client states, France did not just lose military access. It lost the entire architecture of influence it had spent 60 years building. The pressure campaign through ECOWAS was, from Paris's perspective, not just about restoring democratic norms. It was about recovering strategic position. And now, with the fracture inside Nigeria's military becoming visible, France is scrambling. Because without Nigeria, there is no ECOWAS military option. Full stop. The economic power, the troop numbers, the logistics, the political legitimacy, it all runs through Abuja. If Nigeria cannot deliver its military, the intervention option collapses, and with it, one of the last remaining levers, France, has to reverse what is happening across its former Sahelian sphere of influence. What happens next in this standoff could redefine the power map of the entire region. The figure who most clearly embodies what the juntas represent, and who has become something of an ideological focal point for this moment, is Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso. Traoré came to power in September 2022 at just 34 years old, making him the world's youngest sitting head of state at the time. He speaks in a register that is deliberately confrontational toward Western powers, explicitly invokes Pan-Africanist and Marxist-inflected rhetoric, and has positioned Burkina Faso's junta not as a temporary transitional authority, but as the leading edge of a continental transformation. Whether one accepts that framing or views it skeptically, his political impact is undeniable. Traoré's speeches circulate on WhatsApp groups across West Africa. Clips of him denouncing France, calling on African armies to refuse to serve as instruments of neo-colonial pressure, and invoking the legacy of Thomas Sankara are watched millions of times by audiences that include, yes, serving soldiers in other countries' armies, The psychological and ideological influence this creates is something that conventional diplomatic and military strategy is not designed to address. You cannot sanction a viral video. You cannot deploy troops against a narrative. And the narrative is winning, at least at the popular level. This creates what analysts are increasingly calling the traitor trap. It is a dynamic in which leaders who align themselves with the ECOWAS pressure campaign, who back sanctions, endorse the threat of intervention, and stake their political credibility on the idea that the juntas would be forced to step back, are now finding that the political ground has shifted beneath their feet. The longer the juntas survive, the stronger they appear. The longer ECOWAS's threats go unfulfilled, the weaker the bloc looks. And the more visible the resistance inside Nigeria's military becomes, the more those leaders are caught in an impossible position. Push forward with a strategy that lacks the military foundation to succeed, or back down and accept a humiliation that permanently alters the region's power dynamics. This is not a comfortable place for any head of state to be standing. Consider the position of Nigeria's leadership specifically. Nigeria has long claimed a kind of informal hegemony within ECOWAS, not through aggression, but through size, economic weight, and the understanding that what Nigeria decides, the bloc generally follows. That hegemony depends on Nigeria being able to translate its will into action. But if Nigeria's own military is fractured along the precise fault line that the intervention strategy would require it to cross, the North-South Muslim-Christian ethnic kinship line, then the claim to hegemony starts to look hollow. And hollow hegemony in West Africa does not remain theoretical for long. It invites challenge. Niger's Junta, which now controls a critical uranium-producing country that supplies a significant portion of France's nuclear fuel supply, has already demonstrated that it is prepared to absorb pressure without blinking. Mali's government, under Colonel Assimi Goïta, has expelled French forces, kicked out the UN peacekeeping mission MINUSMA, and signed new security partnerships with Russia. Burkina Faso has followed a similar trajectory. These are not governments operating in fear. They are governments that have read the regional mood accurately and are betting, with some confidence, that the intervention option will never materialize. So far, that bet is looking increasingly sound. For the West, and particularly for France and its European partners, the implications of this moment go far beyond Sahelian politics. The Sahel has become a test case for a much larger question: whether Western-aligned multilateral frameworks in Africa can still function as instruments of political pressure in an era of growing geopolitical competition. Russia's presence, through Wagner, now rebranded as the Africa Corps, is not incidental background noise. It is a deliberate counterpositioning, designed to offer African governments a security partnership that comes without the democratic conditionality and political strings that Western engagement typically attaches. Whether that offer is genuinely better for African populations is a separate debate. What is not debatable is that it exists, that it is being accepted, and that it is reshaping the options available to governments and militaries across the continent. The United States, for its part, has been watching this unfold with a mixture of concern and strategic ambiguity. Washington has its own counterterrorism equities in the Sahel. American forces have operated in Niger, Mali, and elsewhere under various security cooperation frameworks, and the rise of Russian influence in the region is a direct challenge to American strategic interests. But the U.S. has also been more cautious than France about pushing the intervention option, aware that military action in the Sahel could produce humanitarian catastrophe, accelerate displacement, and potentially destabilize the very governments that are supposed to be ECOWAS's core members, including Nigeria. That caution has created a gap between American and French positions that the juntas have been skilled at exploiting. Every moment of visible Western disagreement is amplified. Every sign of hesitation in Abuja is treated as evidence that the intervention option is dead. The information environment in West Africa is being actively managed by the juntas, by their Russian partners, and by a new generation of Pan-Africanist media networks that have emerged across the continent with extraordinary reach and almost no accountability to the journalistic standards that Western outlets claim to uphold. In that environment, the story of soldiers in northern Nigeria questioning their orders does not stay a quiet internal matter. It becomes a symbol. It becomes content. It becomes proof to audiences across the region that the ECOWAS strategy is not just failing, it is morally illegitimate. And that is the deepest problem France and its allies now face. Military strategies can be revised. Diplomatic positions can be repositioned. Sanctions can be lifted and reimposed. But legitimacy, once lost, is extraordinarily difficult to recover. The ECOWAS pressure campaign was designed to work through two mechanisms: economic pain and military credibility. The economic pain is real, but has not produced the political collapse the strategy required. The military credibility is now visibly eroding. When those two mechanisms fail simultaneously, the only remaining option is negotiation. And negotiation from a weakened position means accepting terms that, a year ago, would have been unthinkable. What might those terms look like? Almost certainly, some form of international acceptance of the juntas as legitimate governing authorities, at least on a transitional basis. A de facto acknowledgement that the alliance of Sahel states is a permanent feature of the regional landscape rather than a temporary aberration to be reversed. A renegotiation of security partnerships that reduces France's direct military footprint in the region and opens space for alternative partners. Possibly economic agreements that give the Sahel states access to international markets and financing on terms less dependent on IMF and World Bank conditionality. None of this would represent a clean victory for democratic governance. And that matters, because beneath the geopolitical chess game, there are millions of people in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger who are living through escalating jihadist violence, deepening poverty, and governance structures that have shown little indication of transitioning back to civilian rule on any specific timeline. The junta's popularity is real, but it is partly a product of the genuine failures of the governments they replaced, and partly a product of information environments in which criticism of junta leadership is actively suppressed. Whether the sovereignty they claim is being exercised in the interests of ordinary Sahelians or primarily in the interests of the military officers who now hold power is a question that deserves more scrutiny than it is currently receiving in either Western or Pan-Africanist media. That is a question worth sitting with. Back in Nigeria, the fracture inside the military is forcing a broader political conversation that the government in Abuja would almost certainly prefer to avoid. Nigeria is itself at a critical juncture. It is grappling with fuel subsidy removal and its economic consequences, managing persistent security challenges in the northeast from Boko Haram remnants and ISWAP, navigating separatist pressures in the southeast, and dealing with a currency crisis that has hammered ordinary Nigerians' purchasing power. Against that backdrop, the idea of committing Nigerian troops to an external military operation against countries with which millions of Nigerians have cultural and kinship bonds was always going to be a hard sell domestically. The resistance inside the military is, in some ways, a reflection of a broader public resistance that polling and social media data had already been signaling for months. Nigerians, particularly in the north, do not want this war. They do not see the Sahel juntas as a threat to Nigeria. Many see them, rightly or wrongly, as a kind of model of defiance against a system they themselves feel excluded from. The political cost of ignoring that sentiment for any Nigerian government is significant. The political cost of being seen to fight a war on behalf of French strategic interests in the court of northern Nigerian opinion could be devastating. This is the traitor trap at its most acute. A leadership that backed the strategy is now trapped between external expectations it cannot meet and internal resistance it cannot easily suppress. Every day that passes without resolution makes the trap tighter. And so the question that now hangs over the region is not whether the ECOWAS intervention will happen. At this point, the weight of evidence suggests it will not, at least not in any militarily significant form. The question is what comes after the intervention options collapse. What does ECOWAS look like on the other side of this failure? What does Nigeria's regional leadership role look like? What does France's African policy look like? And what does the Sahel look like when the pressure has fully lifted and the juntas no longer need to perform defiance, but actually govern? The alliance of Sahel states has been adept at the politics of resistance. Whether it can govern effectively whether it can reduce jihadist violence, deliver economic development, build state capacity, and eventually create the conditions for genuine political participation, is a test it has not yet fully faced. The honeymoon period of post-coup nationalist sentiment does not last forever. It runs on grievance and symbolism. Governance requires something more durable: institutions, resources, accountability, and legitimacy that survives beyond the initial wave of anti-Western feeling. That is the longer story, and it is one that will unfold over years, not weeks. But in the immediate term, what the fracture inside Nigeria's military has revealed is something that may prove to be the most consequential political fact in West Africa right now: the gap between what African governments commit to in multilateral forums and what their own populations and armed forces will actually support. That gap is not new, but it is wider than it has been in decades, and it is being exposed in real time, in a region where the balance of geopolitical forces is shifting faster than any outside power has been able to respond to. For anyone watching this moment carefully, and there are capitals around the world doing exactly that, the lesson is stark. The model of managing African political outcomes through multilateral pressure, conditional financing, and the implicit threat of force backed by Western-trained regional militaries is running into something it was not designed to survive: the genuine, bottom-up rejection of its premises by the people those militaries are drawn from. What replaces it is not yet clear. The Sahel juntas have not demonstrated that they have a better answer. Russia's involvement in the region is transactional and has its own contradictions. China is watching carefully, but has not yet committed to a deep security role. The African Union is caught between its own charter commitments to democratic governance and the political reality that some of its most strategically significant members are now governed by military leaders with significant popular bases. What is clear is that this moment, the fracture in Nigeria's military, the implosion of ECOWAS's intervention credibility, the consolidation of the alliance of Sahel states, is not a temporary turbulence. It is a structural shift. The architecture of West African security that has been in place since the post-Cold War era is not being reformed. It is being dismantled piece by piece, and what is being built in its place is still, in the most important ways, unknown. That uncertainty is not comfortable, but it is where we are. The soldiers in northern Nigeria who are quietly refusing orders are not making a grand political statement. They are making a human one. They are saying, "These are our people. We will not fight them." And in that refusal, they are telling every government, every alliance, and every outside power that has tried to manage this region from above that the map they have been working from is no longer accurate. The real map of West Africa is drawn in something much harder to erase than borders. It is drawn in kinship, in faith, in shared memory, and in a growing collective conviction that the era of external management of African sovereignty is ending, whether the outside world is ready for that or not. The question now is not whether that era is ending. It is what Africa, and particularly West Africa, builds in the space that is opening up, and whether the leaders who emerge to fill that space will serve the people who gave them their power, or simply become the next iteration of a familiar story. That answer is still being written.